Okay, so this is also written by a practitioner, and he was responding because one of the nuns here at one point said she can't. She wonders why she finds herself watching the news so often when it's so upsetting and toxic. And so this person asked himself the same question. And what he came to was that he was watching the news in the hope of hearing some good news. That for once there would be some kind of good news. And so when he finally realized this, and he realized that our present media is not constructed to give good news, it's constructed because, again, it sells more things. If it has bad news that makes you have a lot of emotion, yeah, more people watch it. So when he realized that, the media is not a specialist in good news, then he decided to stop watching it so much. But he still had this feeling of, what's happening in the country and what can I do about it? Okay, so what he said is my coping mechanism, and I don't think this is just a coping method. You're not just coping. I think this is being active, is to be a vessel for good. Okay, to do all I can, whenever I can, however I can, and whatever I can to do good. The only way I can prevent the toxic climate from overpowering my psyche is to make every effort to look into the eyes of people I often ignore. The gas station attendant, the clerk in the grocery store, the receptionist, the person on the other end of the telephone when you're making flight reservations or contacting the complaint department or whatever. People who are often ignored, and to actually have some kind of human contact with them so that they feel appreciated and seen. And we can do this regardless of talking politics or whatever our political beliefs are. So I give money to beggars and homeless people more than I did before the election. I recycle and do everything I can to protect the earth, even in the smallest ways. Okay, so I try to help animals more than before the election. I am cognizant of the good in others more. That's really nice. He's also decided to go back to school and study international development and sustainability, and to do everything within my power to bring resources, education, and power to the poorest and most victimized, and try to devise policies and programs to protect the planet. Since 2016, my ears are on high alert, sharpened for any sound of bigotry within my proximity. I am prepared to appropriately and politely shut down racism, genderism, any kind of ism or hatred should it fall, should I hear it around me. And this is something really important. And when Patricia was here, we were talking, about the whole thing of women not being listened to when they report sexual assault. And she referred me to a website. Actually, I should do a whole BBC on this. So maybe I'll wait and do that one tomorrow. But really talking about how language influences it. We say, women who have been sexually abused as if it's the women's problem. We don't say men who have sexually abused women, pointing that it's actually a man's problem. It's the man who acts, okay? But I'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay, so he's prepared to comment on these things. And, the only way to combat this, what's happening around us is from metastasizing into our personal lives and communities is to keep doing good. So he says, "Thank you, Donald Trump. You have made me a better man." Okay. Then he says that he's confounded, and perhaps you can enlighten me, which I can't, about how people, particularly those with extraordinary wealth and comfort, can be so callous towards the most vulnerable and innocent. Where is their basic humanity, and why is it void? And so then he goes on to say, some people have told me that maybe these people lack education, but he says it isn't a matter of education. You know, empathy is a natural human quality that arises in our mind. And so why are we seeing so little of it in some people who have extraordinary power? Hold on a second. Okay, so I'm not going to attempt to answer this. I'm going to let you attempt to answer it. Okay, so we'll start.
I just read the other day that studies show that people in positions of power have less empathy, and it's actually something in the brain. It's something about having power, having responsibility, does something to your brain such that you have less empathy. So it's actually a physiological thing.
Oh.
But it's not, of course, it can be changed. If you become aware of this situation, you can make more effort to be empathic. But
Yeah.
apparently it's quite a common problem.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's solely physiological because it has to do with how a person's thinking. Yeah. But definitely having that power and that mindset might train certain neural pathways so that they become quite smooth and quite easy to go down.
I think that the wealth and the power becomes a fuel for the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance to put one's sense of self in front of all others, and that the lack of understanding that everything that we accomplish in our lives is due to other people's efforts. Mm-hmm. And they generally are the working force of the world, the medical facility and all the helpers who keep people healthy. There's a narcissism there. There's a thinking that oneself is literally, not just figuratively, but literally more important than anybody else, and that they become almost too painful to recognize. Because I can't imagine that a human mind can look at someone who's marginalized and has a lot less than you with having something deep down inside of oneself be disturbed. And you could see it in a lot of the ways when the women who were victims of sexual assault trying to address some of our Congress people on the discomfort to be actually to see somebody who was suffering and to have such almost like an aversion to it because it was touching base into something deep inside of them that they don't want to, connect to.
It could be fear.
Fear, yeah.
Because actually we have some feeling for the other person, and we know that it could happen to us. I think it has to do also with the same reaction people have why they don't go into a hospital to visit a sick relative or friend. It reminds us too much that it could be us.
Also, some people with that disposition may be drawn to seeking power and wealth and prioritizing it in their lives. So it may not be the power and wealth always causing it, but people who don't have empathy for others are maybe more likely to seek power over others and to prioritize wealth in their life rather than other things. I don't know, I wouldn't say that's not always the case, but I think that there's an element of that there.
It could be a factor, yeah. Now, of course, we're all making guesses about other people. Let me ask you, when you lack empathy for somebody, because we're not always totally empathetic towards other people, when you lack empathy and shut people out, what's going on inside of you? Because it's much easier for us to talk about ourselves than to make guesses about other people.
But that wasn't the question originally.
I know that. I'm changing the question. Okay. I'm changing the question.
Well, I want to respond to both. Having worked in philanthropy for a lot of years, a long time ago now, but I've met many, many wealthy people who had tremendous empathy, who were genuinely concerned about using their wealth in a way that was benefiting others. So it's not an automatic that comes with that. But what's also true, just statistically, I know that from that same source, from years of working in philanthropy, that people who have less, percentage-wise, give much, much more than people who have a lot. And, I don't know what the statistics or sociologists say about that, but it certainly seems to me that it's kind of like how we all get stuck in our own bias. If I know what it's like to be poor, or I know what it's like to struggle, then I have a lot of empathy for people who are struggling like I am. If I don't really have that experience, then I don't relate to it so well. And for sure, when I see the places or the people or the groups where I feel my own empathy automatically arises, and the places where my heart hardens, it starts with what's familiar to me. So I think it all comes back to that very narrow view.
So to answer your second question about lacking empathy, I feel like the person deserves whatever suffering they have. So in this country, there's kind of a stigma around being poor or being a minority. So it's easy to kind of blame them for their problems. They're lesser than, they didn't work hard enough, they're lazy, they're stupid. All these justifications for them being on the bottom and I'm on the top. So
Yeah.
really blaming them for their own problems.
Yeah. So this is something very important that we all have to look for in our own minds. How we create an us and them. And, they didn't work hard enough. They haven't gone through what I've gone through, whatever it is. And so therefore they're inferior. And, the real poisonous thing is they deserve it. Yeah. Because we hear everybody's created equal, but everybody isn't created equal. That's the thing. Everybody isn't. We're born into different families, different historical times, different social milieus. We all come into the world with different karma, and face different things in our lives. And so to say, well, everybody has equal chances is, everybody has equal Buddha potential. Okay, does everybody have actually equal physical, external opportunities? No. Yeah. And so, that we shouldn't use that. We shouldn't expect everybody has the same opportunities and then blame them if they don't meet our judgment of what success is.
My particular brand was, I've worked so hard to get where I am, and you had more opportunities and more money. What are you complaining about? So there was that arrogance that was built on that history. But so it's something that, I noticed and I worked on, because it was directed people that were close to me as well as people who were not so close to me. And then I realized what a barrier it was to actually understanding and empathizing with what they were going through, because it was all based on my inflated idea of what I had accomplished in my life, because I started out with such little and ended up having a little more. So, but also in terms of the empathy, I don't think that is only some wealthy people who lack empathy. I think that can cut across, any type of population. Definitely. It just, it's just a mental attitude that can be given rise to by anything. I've also known people, and I've been myself, who were intellectually snobbish. I am intelligent. I went to such and that school. I got a scholarship. I got a fellowship. I have a doctorate degree, and they relate to the world. I used to do that on the basis of that. Everybody's inferior because I have this intellectual whatever. So it's so many different things that we can use to prop ourselves up and then diminish everybody else.
Yeah. Okay. This will be the last comment.
I also think that coming through looking at life with the lens of lack or poverty then colors everything that you do and how you relate to anyone else, no matter how much resources you have. So that really influences, and that's to me, that's based on fear. I'm not going to have enough. And so then lack of empathy follows from that, judgment.
Yeah. And that feeling of the glass half full isn't just for the people whose glasses are less than half full. It's also for the people whose glasses are more than half full. You know, it's a mentality. Okay, so he concludes here, you know, saying, but I know we must not lose hope. We must not lose empathy, especially for those people that we don't understand who seem to lack empathy. In other words, let's not make another us and them, and we're superior to them because we have empathy and they're just jerks, okay, and should resign. You know, that instead of, you know, another us and them and another we're better, okay, have empathy for everybody. And then he concludes it again. Yes, Donald Trump, you have made me a better man. So, yeah. So this is how you practice mind training. Okay? Because one big part of mind training is how to practice during adversity, how to transform adversity into the path. And what this person wrote is an excellent example of doing that. Yeah. And so this is what we all need to do. Yeah. If we don't do this, then we wind up in the dump. And we're the one who suffers. Yeah. So I really praise what this person has done.